Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. This is the fourth and last video of the Djerba Masters from Tunisia, a tournament which was won in great style by the player with white, Marc-Andrea Maurizzi from France, one of the lowest rated players in the event, but he crushed the field with 7.5 out of 10, 2900 performance, really spectacular. And in this game, he's playing against GM Bacrot. So, Marc-Andrea Maurizzi, he's only 17 years old. He's the current world junior champion. And he's obviously a great prodigy from France. I met him in 2019 in Bratislava in the European Championships, where he won the under 12. He was actually in the room next to mine, in the same hall. I was training some of the Spanish kids. And already then he was very serious, very strong, 2400 plus. And he's gone on to demonstrate that he's a force to be reckoned with in the future. Bacrot, I've also played with Bacrot in Linares in 2006, I think. He crushed me. He's a very strong player. He's a prodigy. We've talked about him before on the channel. When he was 12, he was already nearly a grandmaster. He's another very good player. But of course, now he's certainly more veteran. He's probably near 37, 38 years old, maybe even more. And Maurizzi is very young. Still a heavy clash and a difficult game for Maurizzi because he's playing against basically the number two, number three French player behind FIDE and Lennart. So it's a tricky one for him. But as we will see, he took the game very seriously and he was able to win a magnificent encounter against GM Bacrot. Let's get to look at the game. Maurizzi played with white, and Bacrot for this game chose the French defense. And Maurizzi went for knight c3, which is the main line, the classical variation. And after e5, he plays the Steinitz line. Now, some of you will remember that this was played in the World Championship between Gukesh and Dingliden. And Gukesh played knight e to e2, which is the more trendy line, instead of the old f4, which is actually the line I play as well. But I might be changing to knight ce2 at some point. c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop e3. Now basically the idea behind this line, white develops and will try and play for the queenside castling, except in the case that black decides to close with c4. In that case, he'll go for kingside castling because he doesn't want to face a pawn storm on the queen side. Black has a very flexible attitude here. a6 is theoretical, and now after queen to d2, which is the main line, he can choose between queen to b6, pawn takes pawn, b5, even bishop to e7. So he has a lot of different choices, and white, depending on how black plays, goes for long castle or short castle. This is mainstream theory. You can check this out with one of the main boards on Livshitz or chess.com or with Chessbase. Maurizzi plays knight to e2 here, which I'd never seen before in this precise position. But it does make sense because he wants to overprotect the d4 pawn with the pawn on c3. And after queen b6, hitting b2, the only problem with this move is that he has to play queen to c1. I always thought that this was not good for white. But after this game and after studying with the computer, I found out that it's not so bad to play this. And if black doesn't capture, our next move will be c3. And we create this wonderful V of the victory. Of course, if black captures, then we capture with the E knight. We follow up with c3, and the queen will eventually go to d2. And we get a sort of position similar to the ones we get in the main line variation. Maybe with the opportunity to hit the queen at some point with the bishop. Even so, this is okay for black. This is just slightly better for white. Bacrot played bishop to e7, c3, castle. And as we saw a couple of days ago in the Llada game, Maurizzi goes for h4. But this is very normal in this precise variation because the king sometimes goes to g2 and the rook comes to h3 and even goes through the attack. So h4 is a standard. The center is very well controlled, and there's not an easy way to push through with black. f6, which is the move of Bacrot, is the correct line, trying to get some counterplay, and now h5. I've played this position with black before, and sometimes with the bishop unprotected on the e3 square, we can capture, and sometimes we get in rook takes f3 or knight takes e5, speculating on the bishop undefended on e3. However, in this position, the bishop is protected by the queen. So these sacrifices, I check them out, but you don't get anything with black. So if we can't sacrifice, we have to stop h6. So Bacrot plays h6. Now the computer suggests rook to h3, swinging the rook over. Interesting. If black captures, the bishop and the queen will attack on the king side. Maurizzi played a3. Now the idea of a3 is to stop any checks or shenanigans on b4. The problem with a3 is that after knight a5 you have to deal with the threat knight to b3. But Maurizzi plays rook to b1. I actually remember a game, I'm not sure if we put it, I think we maybe published it on the channel, a Carlsen game a few weeks ago, which was very similar to this. Was it Carlsen Nepomniachtchi from the Champions Tour? I have the feeling that we saw this game on the channel a few weeks ago. So check the backlog of videos and you might find it there. Carlsen against Nepomniachtchi. And I remember vividly knight to a5, rook to b1 in a very similar situation. So these are two games you can file away in your database if you're playing with white French or with black. Now here Bacrot made his first inaccuracy. He played queen to c7, maybe with the idea of playing b5. The computer says this is too slow and you have to go knight to c4, hitting the bishop. And I agree. I mean, this bishop should be eliminated. I just don't understand why Bacrot would make this inaccuracy. He's much better than that. But of course, it's easy to criticize it with hindsight. Knight to h4 would be the move. Take, rook to f7, knight to g6. White is better, but there's no crushing attack. And having eliminated the bishop, also some sacrifices on h6 are not possible. Bacrot played queen to c7, and now Maurizzi played b3, very strong, preventing the knight to come in and highlighting the bad position over there. Of course, at some point the a3 pawn might be hanging, but for the moment it's okay. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. Both options are possible, but here we go into an ending. So Maurizzi captured with the d pawn. He wants to play for the attack. b5, g3, stable. And here is the second inaccuracy. Bacrot played rook to a to c8, a very natural move, which is hard to criticize. The computer gives a very tricky line, which I'm sure Bacrot saw, but I wonder which move he missed. The computer suggests knight takes e5, and now, if we recapture with the knight, d4 hits both bishops. And after bishop takes, queen takes, hits the bishop and the rook. So black would get back his material with a good position. The line that Bacrot probably analyzed was knight takes e5, f takes e5, and now again d4. And he's hitting the bishop on e3 and also the knight on f3. Now, the computer suggests castle, take, and now bishop to d5, and black has sufficient counterplay. I think he's more than okay in this position. So I'm sure that if Bacrot had seen this position, he would have gone for this line. But that makes me think that after d4, he didn't consider castle, and maybe only considered moves such as knight takes d4, things like that. And maybe there was something he didn't like. It's hard to say. Maybe there's even a sacrifice on h6. Again, hard to say. But black is okay. So maybe, with hindsight, he should have gone for knight takes e5. But he went for rook ac8, castle. Now this knight takes pawn is no longer valid because we have the bishop protected by the king. Knight to b6, queen to c2, highlighting the weak g6 square. Now, as a French player myself, I would have realized that my position is starting to get very bad, and hopefully I would have played d4, pawn takes pawn, and c4, sacrificing a pawn, but now I have counterplay on the a3 square, the b3 square, the d5 square for my knight. I would be a pawn down, but my pieces start to play. And this is very important. If any of you out there play the French, I'm sure you understand and recognize this move. But Bacrot played queen to d7. It definitely wasn't his day. He wants to try and bring his queen to the protection. But queen to g6 is a good move. Now queen to e8 is not okay because of queen takes e6. Winning. So black plays rook to c6, and here Maurizzi plays a move which forces black to resign. And I'm sure that Bacrot didn't see this move when he played queen to d7, because if he'd seen it, he would definitely have played the d4 variation I showed you before. The move is knight to g5. A fantastic move, a bolt out of the blue, threatening mate on h7. So the knight has to be captured. But the problem is h6 now threatens mate on g7. Now the only sensible move would be either rook to f7 or bishop to d8. Rook to f7 protects with the rook. Bishop to d8 protects with the queen. But if rook to f7, we play h7 check, and we just capture the rook with a winning position. Whereas bishop to d8, we play pawn takes pawn, threatening h7, and if rook to f5, we go g4, rook takes f1, rook takes f1, and there's no way to prevent h7 and rook f8. This final position allows me to stress the total lack of coordination of black's pieces on the queen side. There's so many points in so few squares. This is condemned to be a losing proposition. And that's why black should have played before the strong d4 and c4. And this is something that if you're an aspiring player, you need to understand. I'm going to actually turn the board around so you can see it and understand it. You're here. You have a lot of pieces on the queen side. You're equal material, but your pieces don't have any type of expectation to attack or to coordinate. And your opponent is bringing pieces to the attack on the king side. So what do you have to do in these situations? You can't just stay around and die like Bacrot did. You need to play a pawn sacrifice and get your pieces into motion. You need to find squares for the pieces, even if that means giving up one pawn to be able to do it. Of course, Bacrot is a top-rated player. He's very, very strong. So I'm sure he considered this option and preferred the other one, because as I always say, it's easy to criticize with hindsight, but during the game, you're forced to make decisions with imperfect information. So sometimes you make good moves, sometimes you make bad moves. This is not to say that Bacrot is a bad player. He's an excellent player, extremely strong player. But this day, at this hour, and at this moment, he made a bad decision. And that's the way we try and improve. We spot the bad decisions, try to incorporate this information into our games, and just hope that when the time comes and we are playing, our decisions will be mostly good, intuitive decisions. And hopefully that allows us to improve as players, have fun, get better, and keep enjoying these videos. See you in the next one.